Once a jolly swagman sat beside the billabong under the shade of the coolibah tree, and he sang as he sat and waited by the billabong, "You'll come a-waltzing, Matilda, with me."
Good day, mates. My story is about taking a big risk and reaping many rewards. What's that? A new banner in the Greeley West Teaching Lounge. Australian exchange teaching. Well, that piqued my interest quite a bit because my single parenting responsibilities had diminished. My son was in New York auditioning. My daughter is starting her junior year at CU. So over the course of weeks, I completed the application and sent it off January '87, complete with photos. And I heard nothing. July of '87, I was at a Vancouver workshop. I called home and my daughter said, "Mom, a lady with an accent called to find out about our house." So I figured, the exchange must be on. That lady, Marilyn Clem, her husband, Steve Smart, and I exchanged lengthy snail mail letters that autumn to get to know each other. We were not only exchanging jobs, but houses and cars as well. So District 6 said she needed to come 2 weeks early to get to know our procedures. So my fiance and I drove to Stapleton to fetch Steve and Marilyn January 1st, 1988. And we showed them around our homes, our communities, yes, Greeley West High School. We were trading, as I said, not just jobs. As my time to depart approached, I became pretty anxious. I was going to trade a whole known life for a completely unknown one. And I thought, well, maybe the world is square and I'm about to jump off the edge of it. So come along with me as I take you to the land down under and my experiences through everyday life, a school culture, and my opportunities. So everyday life. Les and I landed in Sydney to be greeted by his cousins who showed us a wonderful time. It was January 20th. What I mostly remember, though, is being crammed and jammed onto that train going from Roseville to Sydney Harbor to enjoy the fireworks, the band music, the tall ships. It was Australia's 200th birthday, January 26th, and I felt so fortunate to be there. The next day, we flew to Adelaide, South Australia. In the airport, we found this sign, Ila and Les, held by Steve Smart's mom and sis. And they took us to our temporary home. And as I stood in front and looked out, the esplanade, the beach, and all the waters of St. Vincent Gulf, I thought, well, I can sure be happy here watching sailboats and cargo ships go by to Outer Harbor. Inside, they showed us the loo was on the back porch. There was no central air. There was no central heat. There was no potable water. And they said, shopping is kind of limited. You have to take your chances. Thursday night is okay, but Saturday after 1, no, and certainly not on Sunday. So I learned to buy my vegetables and fruits by the kilo, fuel by the liter. And you know that beach, when wintertime came, it was not so pleasant. There were piles and piles of seaweed, smelly brown stuff. But there were pleasant realities. One was meeting Margaret. She cut our hair. And Peter across the street was a physicist and an amateur astronomer. He and his wife invited us up past the pollution of the city to Riverton, to their home for a late night supper and a chance to climb up in his homemade telescope to see the brilliance of a star in Orion's belt. Well, what about driving their Mitsubishi stick shift? I'm shifting here, the windscreen wipers are here, the turn signal is here. It was just all backwards, you know? Left turns automatic, right turns problematic. I tasted some foods unusual to me: Indian curries, spaghetti bolognese, Greek moussaka. I really came to enjoy beetroot salad, slices of red beets with white onions. But you came to hear about the animals. Wildlife sanctuaries featured red and gray kangaroos, and of course, those adorable koalas. But more unusual by far was the fact that when my friend and I went during my fall break to southern Tasmania, we were in Mount Field Park, which was plenty dry, and we came across a little stream, and there was a platypus swimming by in the wild. Tasmanian devils baring their treacherous teeth in captivity, a nocturnal chance to see wombats going in front of me. And spring break, I was in Western Australia. I bicycled around Rottnest Island where these quokkas were. They're also members of the marsupial family. Well, what about the school culture I was sent there to teach? First of all, there was the staff meeting wherein I met all the people and heard about how they do things over there. And being quite nervous at the end of the day, I was very grateful that an Englishman, tall, lanky Ross, approached me and said, "How would you and your mate like to come to a lamb dinner stuffed with apricots this Saturday night? Our office mate Tony and his wife will come as well." Well, it wasn't just the bubbly that warmed my heart. The timetable, that's what turned me upside down, because different classes met in different slots, different days. So one day I'd have year 9s for period 1. Next, year 10s would come for a double period, but it was separated by the recess break, 25 minutes long. And then the 11Ps, pre-matric, for those going on to school, on either side of a lunch break that was, get this, 50 minutes long, and then a study period. And the next day, all different. I didn't meet the year 10s at all. And the year 9s, those 13-year-olds feeling rambunctious, would show up in the afternoons. My classroom, portable building, was right across from the canteen. And I saw those students ruck up to buy their chip sandwiches. Yep, potato chips on a bun. And their lollies. So it was early February, and it was recess time, and I went quickly from my classroom to the office to grab a paper to make copies of it in the main building. I was used to school time equals school work. Tony and Ross said, "Wait a minute, Ila. It's recess time. It's time for a cuppa and a chat, so have a seat." Well, that began a reorientation on my part. Maybe I could ease on down the road, enjoy the journey a little more. "It'll be right, mate," they said. You know, winter mornings, June, July, August, I showed up and it was really cold in my classroom. So like a modern Laura Ingalls Wilder, I switched on the boiler. And by the second or third period, the kids were raising the windows and saying, "It's too steamy in here, Miss Leavy." You know, they wondered if the Grand Canyon were in Colorado. And by the way, had I been to see Magic Johnson play basketball? The blackboard, oh yeah, I had to clean it at the end of every day. Student desks, I had to remove all the papers and the gum. There was no custodian. And if I wanted to read what they had written for responses or essays, I had to collect each student's notebook, so I carted home a stack, and I sat in my chair with a portable heater right there. Paul and Sonia, you're pretty serious 11P students. It's easy to challenge you, and I'm glad I've met your parents. John de Blasio, I haven't seen a speck of work from you yet. Year 10, I began to inquire, and teachers told me that you had not passed year 9 nor year 8 English either. It turns out one only has to pass 5 of 7 subjects to be promoted. Well, in March, Les returned to Colorado for the whole farming and ranching season. So I was kind of more alone, and I began to have doubts and to be discouraged. Did I really have the mettle to continue to meet these challenges for the rest of the year? In a rare phone call to a friend, she said, Ila, if you climb this mountain, no one's going to take it away from you. So I put my best foot or feet forward to continue to try to inspire students to reach a little higher. And I took advantage of some cultural opportunities. The Adelaide Festival was on. I went to see Japanese theater and Chinese theater and to hear the haunting didgeridoos. At the end of June, mid-year, there was a banquet for all of the exchange teachers. And I heard the keynote speaker say, value the differences. That's just what I needed to hear. I hadn't come to Australia to have it be like America, had I? Next, I want to tell you about 4 or 5 opportunities. First of all, camping. Marg and Ashley took me with them in their Subaru 4-wheel drive club camping in the outback a few times. Tom Yum, that spicy soup tasted delicious as I was in my campfire in front of me. Another time, we camped along the Murray River, very significant South Australia, and there was a tree where there were sulfur-crusted cockatoos. They just looked so majestic. White, gold crowns, but they sounded raucous. When Les returned, they took us camping in the sand dunes. What fun it was to drive the buggies. Greeley Corral scheduled a tour for Australia, New Zealand, 1988. And it coincided with my winter break. So I memorized the music on my own. I'd been singing with them quite a while. And we got to sing in Brisbane at the World Expo with Art Linkletter presiding. My daughter joined me for that tour, and we learned something about the Maori culture in New Zealand as well. Spring break came, or before it came, I booked a sleeper on the Indian Pacific Railway to take me from Adelaide clear across the Nullarbor Plain, which was so deserted, to Perth. And when I got there, the hostess, the mother of my English teacher, showed me some black swans. It was the beginning of learning what was new to the environment there in Western Australia. The first week, I booked a chance to see wildflowers. I just love wildflowers of all varieties. And the second week, a chance to see these ancient jarrah trees and an old whaling station. Well, when I returned, Virginia and Jim said, Ila, there's a one-off event, opera in the outback. It's going to be in Beltana, so why don't you come with us camping? Well, we went, and the entire Adelaide Symphony, part of the 200th anniversary event, came by train. Under those skies that held the music forever after was Dame Kiri Tikanawa, opera soloist. So November came, my son visited, and he held Ivan, the koala. And a week after that, the Aussie son came, the Sydney cousin's son, and took me to the Adelaide Grand Prix. Well, what's to say? Speed and roaring, deafeningly roaring sounds. Celebrations? Well, Les and I decided to get married in Australia, on the beach, across from our house. We had the Aussie relatives as our witnesses, and not even all the black flies could damage the joy of that evening. I also celebrate the lasting friendships of those I met in Australia. You know, we've exchanged homes and experiences. Ross and Tony have taken me back to Finnan High School. These people came to America to teach. It's just been a blessing, and we stay in touch by email. December 31, 1988 arrived. Time for us to leave the land of the kookaburra. So we flew to Stapleton. Our families greeted us, and we started a brand new year. But as I sat in the chair looking north, sometimes trying to grade papers, I got really teary-eyed. I just missed the waters so much. And I took my old sweet time falling in love with the Rocky Mountains again. But you know, I carried home the trust. It'll be right, might. So if you have an opportunity to take a big chance, I hope it turns out as well for you as mine did for me. Thank you.